Hello, and thank you for joining me for this month's Professional Learning Series presentation on prior written notices. This month, our Professional Learning Series looks a little bit different. In the past couple of months, you have had staff from special education leadership, the behavior team, and our special education coaches come in and provide you with a variety of different topics in person. This month's presentation will be a recording and will be provided by me, Shelby DiFonzo, regarding understanding prior written notices. This presentation is in response to a corrective action plan from a parent complaint in the fall of 2024. This presentation is mandatory for all special program staff and related service providers in response to that corrective action plan regarding prior written notices. This training will emphasize the importance of issuing prior written notices within a reasonable time frame before implementing any changes to a student's educational program. To ensure compliance with this directive from the Department of Public Instruction, please watch the video, the remainder of this video, and complete the accompanying questions on the Google form. These activities must be completed by May 1st, 2025. Thank you for your attention to this important requirement, and please reach out with any questions you may have. Our learning objectives today will be to review the legal components of an effective prior written notice, paying particular attention to the need to provide prior written notices in a reasonable time before implementing a change to the student's educational program. Additionally, each staff member will demonstrate their knowledge of prior written notice through additional questions found on the accompanying Google form. What is a prior written notice? A PWN is a legal requirement under the Individuals with Disability Education Act. Prior written notices ensure parents are informed about decisions regarding their children's special education services. PWNs must be provided to the family in their native language, and they must be finalized within 5 calendar days after the meeting and provided to parents as well as uploaded to PowerSchool. The legal requirements of a prior written notice state that they must be given to parents and guardians before implementing or refusing an action. They must include a clear explanation of the decision. And prior written notices are used to ensure parental participation and procedural safeguards. There are essential components of a prior written notice. Those include the description of the proposed or refused action, explanation of why the district proposes or refuses the action, description of any assessments, reports, or observations that were used. They include a statement of parental rights and parents' ability to access their procedural safeguards. They also include other options considered, and if there were reasons for rejection of those options, and any other relevant information or factors. There are common mistakes in prior written notices. Those common mistakes could include failing to include reasons for the decision-making process, not describing the evaluation data that supports the decision, omitting other options considered, not addressing additional relevant factors, and/or using unclear or overly technical language. Can a prior written notice be provided before the meeting? The answer to that is no. Even though it has the word prior in the title, a prior written notice has to be created after the meeting. A prior written notice is given prior to or before the proposal goes into effect. Think of it this way. The word prior in the title means prior to implementing the new IEP or actions related to the educational programming for the student. Prior written notices need to be provided to the parent guardian within a reasonable time before implementing a change to the student's educational program. This is to allow the parents or guardian to have time to thoroughly deliberate on the change and respond before the district implements the proposed action. This is very important to ensure that parents are given that opportunity to engage in meaningful parent participation. There are best practices for writing prior written notices. It is important to clearly outline the actions and the justifications for those actions. Use parent-friendly language. Ensure all required elements are included and completed on the document. An important task that is something that I often forgot when I was a special program staff was to review the prior written notice with other IEP team members before sending it out to ensure accuracy. This is important because sometimes we can forget relevant information, or maybe we need somebody's critical eye to review that document. Prior written notices are also used to document conversations and commitments made. This is important because it reflects the decisions and conversations that occurred at that moment during that meeting. It also allows for future team members to review the decisions and conversations that were made. This could include the next year's IEP team. This could include a different schools team, a different districts team. Prior written notices are a great way to tell our story of the decisions that we make to support our students. When is a prior written notice required? They are required when we are proposing or refusing a change to the child's identification, evaluation, or placement. They are required when we are changing their services that ensure that they have access to a free and appropriate public education. They are required when we're responding to a parent's request for services. When we are conducting an initial or a reevaluation, and also before implementing disciplinary removals that could impact their special education services. How do we ensure compliance within our prior written notices? It is imperative that we are documenting all decisions thoroughly and accurately, that we use parent-friendly language and we avoid any unnecessary jargon, that we provide translated versions when required, and we ensure parents receive a copy and understand its contents. We also ensure that we are signing those prior written notices, so if parents do have questions, they know who to come back to with those questions. There are components of a strong prior written notice. Those components include clear description of the action proposed or refused, justification explaining why the decision is being made. That includes data and documentation that supports the decisions. That could be assessments, progress reports, observation, things like that. A strong prior written notice includes consideration of alternatives and, if required, reasons for rejection of those alternatives. It includes other relevant factors. This could be student performance or preference, classroom performance, parental concerns. Additionally, a strong prior written notice includes parental rights and contact information to encourage collaboration. Here is an example of a strong prior written notice. The scenario. Alex is a second grader who has been identified with an educational eligibility of specific learning disability. Alex's IEP team has determined that he is not making adequate progress within the special design instruction that is currently on his IEP. That is 60 minutes per day. And the IEP team has come back together to review that data, and they are proposing to increase the special ed instruction to 90 minutes per day to occur in a resource room setting. When we look at an example of a strong prior written notice, when we look at question number 1, the explanation of why the district is proposing or refusing to take the actions, this description describes that the IEP team proposed increasing Alex's specially designed instruction in that resource room setting from 60 minutes to 90 minutes per day. It is grounded in that progress monitoring data that indicates that despite receiving his 60 minutes of daily instruction, he is not making adequate progress towards his IEP goals in reading and written expression. and that the team believes that this additional 30 minutes will provide increased direct instruction, targeted intervention, and structured practice opportunities to address Alex's academic deficits. The team utilized that progress monitoring data, classroom performance, parent input, and IEP goal progress. The team did consider other options, and they rejected those options. The options the team considered were continuing with the 60 minutes per day in the resource room setting. But this option was refused because data reflected that this level of intervention had not sufficiently supported Alex's skill gaps, and he was making minimal progress towards those IEP goals. The team considered providing additional support within the general education setting only, but this option was also refused due to the nature of his needs and current skill level, and that support in that general education setting alone would not provide the intensive explicit instruction required for him to make meaningful progress. Lastly, the team considered and refused to increase resource supports beyond 90 minutes per day. This option was also refused because the team considered a more intensive placement, but determined that 90 minutes per day could provide the necessary supports while still allowing Alex meaningful access to that general education content and peer interactions. The team did discuss other relevant factors that contributed to the decision-making progress. And those included Alex's strong interest in reading, and he enjoys listening to stories, but he experiences significant frustration when expected to read independently. And without that increased intervention, there was concern by the IEP team that he may develop greater academic anxiety and he may disengage from that learning environment. The team aimed to provide additional structured instruction while maintaining an appropriate balance of that general education exposure and those specially designed instruction in that special education setting. And then this prior written notice was signed and included the name of the individual writing the prior written notice. So if the parent had additional questions prior to this being implemented, they knew who to reach out to. Here is an example of a weak prior written notice. Here's the scenario. Jordan currently receives speech therapy twice per week for 30 minutes. The IEP team met, and the school is proposing to reduce services to once per week, and they didn't have a clear rationale. When the prior written notice was written, under number 1, all it said was that they were going to reduce speech therapy from 2 30-minute sessions to 1 30-minute session. I don't know for sure how long because that wasn't listed. The description of why that was determined, what was the data that was used, is it just says the IEP team decided to do that. Other options, it didn't really have any other options. It just said that the IEP team decided to reduce the services. And then there was an NA written under other relevant factors, and then it wasn't signed. It just said sincerely, and then it was blank. This is an example of a prior written notice. It doesn't explain the decision-making process. It doesn't explain the data that was used, other relevant information. And lastly, it doesn't have somebody who the parent could reach out to. So if a parent received this, they wouldn't even know who to reach out to ask further questions. There are real-world examples of prior written notice issues. These real-world examples came from an LRP article that was recently published. Some real-world examples include missing explanation for refusals leading to parent complaints, failure to document considerations of other options, lack of clarity causing misunderstanding about services, prior written notices not providing the parent's native language when required, and delayed issuing that prior written notice, resulting in those procedural violations. Those are some real-world examples that came from case law across the United States. Summaries and takeaways. Prior written notices ensure parents are fully informed about decisions regarding their child's education. They must include a detailed explanation and justification for any decision that is made. Common errors include missing explanation, lack of documentation, and unclear language. Adhering to legal guidelines help to prevent disputes and strengthen trust with parents. It is imperative that we always review and verify those prior written notice before we provide those to families to make sure that we are being clear and that we have adequately described the events of the meeting. Parents are expected to participate in decisions when the school proposes actions that affect identification, evaluation, placement, and programming for their children. Parents must be informed of those proposed actions and their rights prior to implementing. The prior written notice is a written notice that is intended to inform parents of those proposals or rejections that could include changes in their children's programming and upcoming meetings. And then that finalized prior written notice is provided to the parent after a meeting has occurred within 5 calendar days, where the team agrees to any changes and before implementation of those changes take effect. Reminder, completing this in 5 days allows for the parents' meaningful participation. We have a number of resources available. Those include the procedural safeguards, prior written notice, and parent consent procedures. That is a manual provided by the Department of Public Instruction. The Department of Public Instruction includes prior written notice modules and samples on their website. And in addition, I have linked in a prior written notice rubric that helps to really identify any errors that we may have in our prior written notices. That is the end of this presentation. Please complete the accompanying questions that are found on the Google form prior to May 1st. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions that you may have. You can sure reach out to myself, Dr. Patty Cummings, or any other member of our special education leadership team. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.